Hey, this is Phil Endress back again with another episode of the BBCE podcast. I'm here with Steve Hart, the owner of Baseball Card Exchange, and we're looking forward to diving into our next topic. Our topic today is unopened, vintage unopened to be exact, and how it still reigns supreme in the hobby. So obviously today, Steve, as the leader of unopened in the industry, we have seen a continual upward trend. Sure, there's small dips here and there, but there's been an upward trend in value. And a lot of times we don't like to put, we're hobbyists at the heart of all things,
right?
And so we enjoy this. We enjoy looking at baseball cards. We enjoy the collecting aspect, but it can't be denied that there is certainly an intrinsic value that continues to move upward on unopened today. So we're just going to kind of dive into that and just kind of pick your brain. I know a lot of people pick your brain at the shows. The question, do you think unopened is going to continue to increase in value over the years?
Well, if we look at history, it has constantly over several decades. People have asked me every year, when is it going to end? And I've been terribly wrong. Quite often, I would always say it can't go any higher. It's too strong as it is. It's gonna slow down. Wrong every time. It just keeps growing, especially the blue chip material, which I would put it like pre-86, maybe a few years after that for football, basketball, and hockey. But it just continues to rise.
Yeah. And so, with cards, what's driving the single card market many times is the population report of a certain grade.
Right.
Now, while we haven't graded, boxes or boxes, if you will, this market is still driven by population report, even though that population report is not reported.
Right.
So let's start back. Many people ask you the question, why no population report when you authenticate wax boxes? What would you say to that?
Well, one of the reasons is that we never thought this would explode to what it is. So we did this for several years, maybe even more than a decade, without keeping track. It just wasn't that important. And we also don't grade them, so we didn't have to itemize a grade like a card. I just never thought it would explode to what it was being. So we didn't really keep track. Now, for the last several years, we kind of have. The one thing that skews it, though, is when people crack out a graded cards, a lot of times they send the flip back to the third-party authenticator where it can be removed from the population report. With unopened, nobody has ever given me the label off the bottom of a box to let me know it was opened.
Right.
So that would be heavily skewed too, especially when you get into those years in the 80s where lots of stuff is opened.
Right. So there would really be no accurate report even with a pop report, because many times, especially in the infancy, I would say, of your authentication endeavors, that people were buying the boxes with the BBCE wrap so they could open them and know that this had not been tampered with.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
So, and we've talked about this in other shows. You used to put the business card on the bottom, the gold business card, and that just let people know that, Steve's looked at this, and these are untampered. These haven't been tampered. These haven't been messed with in any sort of way. So a population report would really be just about impossible at this stage.
Yeah, it would be completely skewed for all the items we did before we started keeping track, all the items that have been opened. But as most people know, I have a direct line, email, phone number, always willing to give help. If somebody wants to ask me, what do I think? How many are out there? How many are out there compared to another year around it? I'm always glad to try to give you my best answer.
Okay. So with that said, what's one of what's one of the least available boxes in the 1970s?
Believe it or not, I think maybe not one of the most difficult, but I actually believe we've done less 79-80 Topps hockey than we've done 79-80 O-Pee-Chee hockey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, especially with the sealed case that Heritage found a few years ago of O-Pee-Chee hockey.
Wow.
But yeah, I think we've done less Topps than we have O-Pee-Chee, which is kind of surprising.
That is very surprising. Yep. I would have never thought you would have said that.
Yep. And then some of the other issues, 73 football is a tough one.
Okay.
71 basketball. As far as baseball, probably 71, even though they've been popping up over the years. Hockey, pretty much pre-75. O-Pee-Chee.
Right. Yeah, I mean, really, everything 70s right now is pretty scarce.
Yeah. Yep. And the values are very strong.
Very strong. I don't see them at a lot of show tables. I don't see them offered very, very often on eBay or any really secondary markets besides, auction houses. So with population growth or population report and people wanting to know how much is out there, I mean, we can safely say that all 70s at this point is pretty scarce.
Yeah. I mean, there's some more than others, but comparative to 80 on up, yes, much less.
So you mentioned some of the scarcer products of the 70s. What's some of the more available products of the 70s?
For basketball, probably 72, 73. There's been large amounts of it over the years that have come out. Baseball, probably 78, 79 is when Top started selling a lot of it at the end of the year to certain people.
Okay.
Football, 73, like I said, is tough. So again, 78 and 79, kind of common.
With the fact that we cannot really, figure out a population report, we can just readily assume that there is a lot less 70s than there ever has been. And with that said, the trend of 70s continues to go up.
Right.
Now, have we moved into that area in the 80s at all? Do you feel like there is rare products that you could actually call rare now in the 80s? I know you've lived in the era to where everything was readily available in the 80s.
Right.
But are some of the more rare issues, if you will, of 1980s at this point?
In the 80s, it seems like a couple of the lesser available items that don't come in as often as 84 and 85 Fleer baseball. Not exactly sure. I mean, I do remember living the area, and it was tougher to locate those products. 84 Donruss was always a tough issue.
Right.
As far as basketball goes, we see a decent amount of all of it, even 86, 87 Fleer. And, the reason for that is at $12 a box, a lot of it got purchased and then just thrown into the closet.
Yeah.
So they do pop up.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder why. I've always thought, I don't see a lot of 85 Fleer baseball. It seems like we're always close to being out at the store or out.
Yes, or out.
And, I mean, there isn't a card that's just a huge card in that set.
No, it's got Puckett, Clemens. They're a little tough condition-wise, but it's just the availability that seems to be hard.
And then 84 Fleer is really just Mattingly.
Yeah, yep.
Just Mattingly. And while Mattingly was a great player, not a Hall of Famer either.
No. And then when you get into situations like 84 and 85 Fleer rack, it's even much more difficult to find.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so with Unopened today and the fact that less quantity existed, and there is actually more people coming into the hobby as it would relate to Unopened.
Right.
And so there's just not enough to go around. Would you say in the past 5 or 6 years that you have seen an increase of people coming into the hobby that have an interest in vintage Unopened wax?
Yeah, I believe so. Because like I said, with it being so strong, increasing in value, and people in the age bracket of where I am and several others that keep coming into the hobby, the 80s was where we started and where we loved it.
Right.
So that seems to be very strong.
So is nostalgia driving the market as well then?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of people will open it and don't really care about losing value.
Right.
They open it because they remember it and they loved it. And maybe they even want to build a set like that with their children.
Well, in a lot of cases, as it would relate to 1980s products, overlaying them on to modern issues, it's still a value. I mean, if you can buy a 1984 Topps baseball box for what, $400, something like that, what can you buy new release for $400 today?
Right, exactly.
Not many products.
No.
So it's something they can still sit and rip with their kids and tell stories.
Yes, yep, exactly. And going back to the population report, for anybody interested, when it comes to pre-70, just assume single digits.
Single digits.
For just about anything and everything.
Wow,
So,
370. When you
yeah.
say single digit, less than 10?
Yes, for
Wow.
any wax box. I'm trying to think of any 69 football. There was a slug of boxes found last year, but that still only probably puts it in the 15, 16 area.
Wow.
Anything else, I think you could just safely assume probably single digits for boxes.
So this is hard for people to get their head around in some cases. For those that maybe are more in the card aspect and not the unopened aspect,
Okay.
it doesn't equate. They go, okay, this 1968, for example, Topps wax box. Why is it, are they $200,000 now?
What year?
68?
Baseball?
Yeah. Depending on the series.
Yeah, a few years ago at the National in Cleveland, we had a 62 Topps baseball wax box. And I believe we sold it for $375,000.
Right.
And a lot of people gave me the comment that, well, there's no way the cards in those packs are going to be worth that. I mean, you would have to hit a Koufax 10 or somebody like that to make the value of that worth it. And I agree. Most likely, if you're going to open that box, you could get really slaughtered on that $375,000 investment. The whole point of it is it's in its original unopened form.
Right.
Star Wars figures have a tremendous value in the package,
Right.
in high grade. Once you remove it from the package, it's exceptionally worth much less.
Right.
But really, it's the same figure. It's the form that it's in.
Correct.
Not the value of the cards inside that are potentially in there, but the rarity of the item itself in its original form.
Just the other day you had something on your desk and you called me over to take a look at it, and I thought it was really neat. I believe it was a 71 baseball box.
Yes. Yep.
And you're talking about something being in its original form. On this 71 baseball box was a pad.
Yes, a very rare display box. 71 Topps. They had this idea of kids could enter to have their card printed on a baseball card, their picture printed on a baseball card.
Yes.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what Topps' original plan was for those cards, but in the end, what they did was they randomly chose 25 kids, and they gave them like a box of 1,000 cards of that kid.
Wow.
I've never owned one. That's how rare these cards are.
None of the
25
cards.
kids I've
Okay.
ever owned one.
Okay.
I assume they destroyed them, gave them away, whatever. But this wax box is rare because it has a picture of a kid on it, with a bat in his hand. And this box still had the original pad of 25 entry blanks
Wow.
affixed to the lid. I've only ever seen 2 of those
That's amazing.
with the pad of entry blanks still on the lid of the box.
So the question then goes, well, how much is that pad worth? Well, not much.
Yeah, it's paper.
It's paper.
I don't know, but to a collector, that is an unbelievable unopened display piece.
So that unopened display piece in its original form and format,
The box was full, by the way.
the box is
Yes,
full.
full of packs. So
That is going to get a premium over another 71 box.
yes, with the regular display.
With the regular display. And you really can't equate and say that this pad is worth whatever difference in price it is.
Right.
But it is because it's in its original form.
Collectors, yes,
And you said you've only seen a couple of these anyway. So less than
with
5.
the pad. Yes, with the pad of paper.
Yeah. So again, to come from the car, maybe you're watching this and perhaps you've collected cards all your life and you wonder why there is such a high price on certain issues. That's why, because there is a price that there's a value in the fact that a box in its original unopened format is still available today or still in its original form today.
Right. That seems to be with all collectibles. Any type of collectible that's maybe out of the packaging and handled, compared to a collectible in its original packaging, still sealed, completely different stories and value.
Right. Yeah.
It's the same item,
Right.
but it's the form that it's in.
I grew up in the 80s, so, one of my greatest Christmases ever was getting a Nintendo. And on that Nintendo, I could play Super Mario Brothers and, I could play Tecmo Bowl. And,
Yep.
I loved it. But I ripped that box open so fast
Yeah, that's another perfect example.
on
That
Christmas.
Super Mario Brothers, the game, probably doesn't have a whole lot of value.
Not a whole lot of value.
No, you have it in the package in high grade. We're talking a lot of money.
Or even,
It's the same piece. It's the same item, but people want it in the original packaging form,
Right.
as it was issued.
So years later, I saw I'm not going to quote numbers, but I saw a Nintendo in the original package that had never been opened.
Right.
Well, every kid ripped those things up, rip those things open. And it went for an astounding amount.
Yes. Yep.
And, it just kind of shows, I could buy a Nintendo at the resale store today probably for, less than $100.
Yep.
But to get one that's never been touched, box is still in great condition.
Yep.
Who knows what the value of that is today.
Yep.
So unopened wax, it's a lot more than just what are the cards I can get in it. It is how many of these particular boxes did Topps issue, how many are out there today, how many are in its original format. And so this is another thing, too, that we can talk about. This is why sometimes it doesn't make sense to look at a pack and go, oh, the sell of a pack is, say, $2,000.
Okay.
And there's 24 packs in a box, so that box should be $48,000.
Right.
But sometimes that box is worth a lot more than $48,000.
Usually the box is worth more than the pieces. Probably because, again, it's in its original form as issued.
Right.
It's still... Usually the packs are in higher grade than single loose packs. Just a more desirable item having a full box compared to single packs.
Right. Yeah. The packs, and we can tell this because we buy them, all the time. We can tell pretty much, well, not pretty much, but we can tell a lot of the times if these packs have never been moved.
Yes, a lot of times
box.
with wax box, the consistency when I'm going through it of centering, condition, the seal, I can say this is pretty close to probably an original box.
What's one product, I'm putting you on the spot here, what's one product in the 80s, let's see if your product's the same as mine,
Okay.
that usually I can tell by just lifting the lid if these packs have never been moved?
Most Fleer basketball issues,
Yep.
86, 87, 88, because the packs will have a little slant to them.
Yes.
Because the gum always usually had the same placement in the pack.
Right.
So that part of the pack would be a little higher.
Yep.
So if you can see the packs at an angle as soon as you open the lid, that's a good sign. Yep.
And what about a baseball one? Do you have a baseball one?
If you open the lid, you can immediately tell it's got a
Pretty close.
better chance.
Pretty close. You're the expert. I'm just
I know.
the one that
Well, Fleer and Donruss didn't have gum other than 81, so that's a little tougher.
I think 84 Donruss. And the reason why 84 is because it seems like there's a little extra, like the corners.
Oh, extra wrap hanging off the edges. Yes.
And
Okay.
and it almost conform.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
It's like
Yes.
a puzzle.
Yep. Okay.
But when you see like I've seen a couple, several counterfeit or not counterfeit, but resealed. Those packs are too tight.
Yes, you're right. Yep.
The ties are too tight. But it's funny to see the little nuances from product to product. But you're exactly right on the basketball. That slant
Yes.
is pretty prevalent in most
Fresh
untouched boxes.
Especially 87, 88 Fleer seems to be at a huge slant.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's amazing. Maybe it's a different kind of gum. I don't think I've ever compared the gum in the two. But anyway, that's about it for today's show. I hope this is interesting to you. And again, Steve is accessible. If you have some questions, feel free to send him an email, and he always gets back to you in a timely manner. That's it for today. It's good talking to you. We'll see you next time on the BBCE podcast.